Do you open your purse on the 10th and honestly not know where it went? Not wasted, not blown on anything, just gone in about 40 small pieces you could explain one at a time, and not one of them adds up to an answer? 3 empty jars on a kitchen table in Macon, Georgia are going to answer that. $3,000 in 6 months on a school bus driver's pay in a house that had never once held $300 at one time. But the jars are not the story. What she put in the first jar is the story, and it wasn't money. Dela May Tucker got up at 4:40 every school morning of her life, and by 5:15 she was walking around a bus in the dark with a flashlight. Tires, lights, mirrors, the stop arm that had to swing all the way out and lock. She had driven for the county for 22 years, and she still did the walk around like somebody was watching, because her mother raised her to do things all the way. Then out onto the route, through Pleasant Hill, in the dark, with the heater roaring and the diesel shaking the floor under her boots. She knew every child on that bus. The twins who fought over the third seat like it was land. The tall boy who slept against the window every morning and woke up 1 block before his stop every time without anybody touching him. She called them all baby until they got smart. And then she called them sir and ma'am, and they straightened right up. She lived in her mother's house on Monroe Street, the one her mother left her paid off, and hers. 2 bedrooms, a porch with a step that needed doing, and a pecan tree out back that dropped more than she could ever use. Della had been a widow 11 years and had not been lonely a single day, which she said out loud to people, and which was true about 3/4 of the time. Friday was payday. She cashed the check at the same place she'd cashed it for 22 years and put the whole thing in her purse. And when she got home, she put the whole thing on the kitchen table in one pile. And that pile was the whole system. One pile. Everything in it. The light bill lived in there next to the gas money, next to the grandbaby's field trip, next to whatever the week decided to ask her for. On the shelf over the washing machine, there was a cigar box with the paper worn off the lid. Inside it were her mother's buttons. Every button off every dress and coat and work shirt that woman ever wore out. 40 years of them, loose and clicking. Della could not sew. Never learned, never wanted to. Could not put a hem in a curtain to save her life. She had carried that box out of her mother's house herself and put it on that shelf and never once opened it in front of anybody. At the bottom of it, under all her mother's buttons, there was one blue button that wasn't her mother's. Della put it in there when she was 20. It came off the first coat she ever bought with money she earned, and she took it off the coat on purpose before she gave the coat away. If you're new here, this channel was built for women like Della, like you. Subscribe and stay with us. These stories belong to us. But the pile never lasted, and Della could not have told you where it went. By the 10th of the month, her purse had that light feeling. She counted out in the parking lot before her afternoon run, and the number was always smaller than the number in her head. And she'd think back through the week, and every single thing in it had been necessary. That was the part that wore her down. Nothing was foolish. It was all necessary, and it was all gone. And then there was summer. School bus drivers get paid for the months there's school. June and July, the checks stop. Everybody knows that going in, and knowing it does not help you in July. For 34 years, Della got through summers by borrowing, by going short, or by doing without. She had asked her brother twice. She had gone to the place on Pio Nono Avenue 3 times in her life and paid them for the privilege, and she never told anybody about any of the 3. And the house was talking to her. There was a bucket in the back bedroom under a spot in the roof. And when it rained, the bucket rang, and Della could tell you how full it was without going in there, because the ring got lower as the water got higher. She had heard that bucket go from high to low 100 times. The tax bill came every fall, $610. She opened it, standing up in the yard every year, and never once sat down to do it. and she could not point at one thing she had done wrong. That was what wore the finish off her. It was a tank of gas and a pack of pull-ups for the grandbaby, and a plate at the repast when Sister Cleo passed, and $40 to the cheer squad and the light bill, and Curtis needing $30 until Friday. Necessary, 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 necessary. And then the 10th of the month and a light purse and no name to put on any of it. Her mother had a saying about money, and she said it with her hand flat on the kitchen table, on this same table. You keep it all in one place, baby, so you can see it all at once. Splitting money up is for people who've got money to split. Della believed that for 34 years, and because she believed it, she never separated $1 from another dollar in her entire life. Not once. Not for the roof. Not for the summer. Not for herself. There was a roofer's card in the visor of her own car. It had been up there so long the sun had faded the phone number on one side. She never called it, and she never threw it away either. So the thing that finally moved her came through a bus door at 6:40 in the morning, and it wasn't about money at all. Miss Roberta Hines waited at the corner of Monroe with her great-grandson every school day, and had for 3 years. Everybody called her Miss Burt. She was 81 and had worked the school lunchroom for 33 years before that, and Della had eaten her cornbread as a child, which neither of them ever brought up. They talked through the open door while the boy got himself together, 30 seconds a morning, 5 days a week. That is a real friendship, 30 seconds at a time. One morning in October, Miss Burt had a grocery sack with her, stuffed full, and she was in a hurry about it because the church quilting circle met at 9 and she was carrying the scraps. Della said something about how that was a whole lot of nothing in one bag, and Miss Burt laughed at her, standing on the bottom step, holding the rail. One piece of cloth don't make a cover, baby. You ain't cut it apart yet. Then she got the boy up the steps, told him to sit down front where she could hear about it later, and went on up Monroe with her sack. She was talking about quilting. She had been in that circle since she was 19 years old and had said some version of that sentence 1,000 times to 1,000 people. And she had no idea she had just handed anything to anybody. Della drove the rest of the route with it. Then the afternoon route. Then she came home, and the pile was on the table where the pile always was, and she stood in the doorway with her keys still in her hand and looked at it. One piece of cloth. She did not have a plan. She wants that understood when she tells it now. No plan and no name for any of it. She went in the kitchen and got 3 pickle jars out from under the sink. The ones she'd been saving for no reason at all, the way you do, and she washed them out with the hot water running over her hands until her hands were red. 3 clean, empty jars on the table at 9 o'clock at night, and Dela May Tucker with not one idea what was supposed to go in them. But cutting it apart is not the same as knowing where to cut. And the first month was a mess. She split it 3 ways down the middle even, because even sounded fair. And it was not fair, it was just even. The month jar was empty by the 18th, and she went into the other 2 and took what she needed. And by the 30th, all 3 jars had a little bit of nothing in them, and the pile was back, just spread out over more glass. The second month, she stopped trying to be fair and started paying attention to what was actually true. She said them out loud in her own kitchen, which is not something she'd admit to everybody. The first jar is mine. The second jar is the house, the roof, the water heater, the tax bill in the fall, that step on the porch. Because they ran the interstate through Pleasant Hill before she was born and took half the houses on the other side of it, and this one they did not take, and a house you keep is worth more than a house you live in. The third jar is the month. Groceries, gas, the light bill, whatever the days ask for, and the order was the whole thing. The first jar got filled the same morning the check cleared, before the second, before the third, before anybody's hand got near it. That was the rule, and she could say the whole rule in one breath. 3 jars, and the first one is yours, and it gets filled first. Except her hand kept going in there, not for anything wild. For the gas bill twice, for her granddaughter's cheer fee. Della would open that first jar with a completely good reason every time, and she noticed she never had to open the other two with a reason, and she sat with that a while and did not enjoy it. So she went and got the cigar box down off the shelf over the washer, and she went through her mother's buttons with 2 fingers until she found the blue one, and she dropped it in the bottom of the first jar. Now, when her hand went in there, the first thing it touched was a button off a coat a 20-year-old girl bought with her own money. It is a small, stupid thing. She'll tell you that herself. It worked anyway. The vinegar smell never did come out of those jars. She noticed it every Friday for 6 months, and then she stopped noticing it, and that is its own kind of proof. At the end of that second month, there was $41 still sitting in the third jar on the last day, which had not happened in her adult life. $41, less than she used to hand over on a Saturday without one thought about it. The cigar box was sitting on the kitchen table with the lid off, next to the jars, instead of up on the shelf where it lived. Della came in from the afternoon route and stopped in the doorway and could not remember carrying it in there. She put the lid on it and left it right where it was. It stayed on that table. So the summer came, and for the first time in 34 years, Dela May Tucker did not borrow $1 from one soul. $90 a week went in the first jar. $90 a week off a $410 check, which anybody can do the arithmetic on and see what it cost her, and it cost her exactly what you think it did, mostly in the third jar, mostly in groceries, mostly in July. She picked up the summer charter runs, the ones the younger drivers don't want because they eat your whole day. Church trips to the water park, day camp shuttles, $60 a run, and she took 9 of them in July. 2 field trips in the spring at $80 apiece. Every dollar of that went straight in the first jar without ever touching the table. July was long. She wants that in there. She ate out of the freezer down to the bottom of it and found a bag of butter beans from a summer she couldn't place. She said no to the beach trip with her sister-in-law and said it was her knee, which was a lie, and everybody let her have it. She sat on the porch in the evenings because the porch was free and the pecan tree kept it about 4 degrees cooler than the front room. That is what 22% of a $410 check looks like from the inside. Not a montage. Butter beans. And in August, she called the number on the roofer's card, the faded one, from the parking lot at the bus barn, and she read the number off it out loud twice because the sun had been eating it for 4 years. $850 to patch the back section out of the second jar on a Tuesday. She stood in the yard and watched 2 men on her mother's roof and did not have to ask anybody for anything. That night, she went in the back bedroom and picked the bucket up off the floor, and she drove past the place on Pio Nono without slowing down. For 34 years, every August, she used to ease off the gas a little right there without even deciding to. That year, she went by it at the speed limit and did not turn her head, and she did not notice she hadn't until she was 6 blocks past it. 6 months after the night she washed out 3 pickle jars, Della counted the first one on her kitchen table. Twice the way you do. $90 a week for 26 weeks. 700 more out of the summer runs and the spring trips. $3,040. She had never in her life had $1,000 at one time, and she was 57 years old, and she sat down in her mother's kitchen chair and put both hands flat on the table on either side of that jar and stayed like that a while. But there is a price on being able to see your own money, and Della paid it in November. Curtis came by. Her brother, 54, good man, works, always has. His transmission went and he needed $600, and he came to her because for 34 years, Della was the one who found it. Whatever it was. She always found it, and then she went short herself for 2 months, and nobody ever knew that part, because nobody ever asked. Except now the money was sitting on the table in glass. He looked at the jars. Then he looked at her. "Since when do you have jars, Dell?" She said she had $200 out of the month jar, and that was what she had. He looked at the first jar for a good 3 seconds. He didn't say a word about it, and that was worse than if he had. He took the 200. He said thank you, and he did not come at Thanksgiving, and Della cooked like he was coming anyway, and left the porch light on all that week for a man who was not coming up the steps. She sat with that, and somewhere in there she got honest with herself about something she had never once looked at straight. She had kept that money in one pile for 34 years, so she would never have to say no to anybody. One pile has no edges. When it's all one pile, you can always say, let me see what I've got, and go in the back and come out with it, and go without yourself, and nobody has to find out that it cost you, and you never have to be the woman who said no. The jars gave her edges. Edges are what people bump into. 34 years of being easy to reach, and she had called it being good. And she was not sure, sitting there, whether she had been protecting her family or protecting herself, because a woman who never says no never has to find out what people do when she does. She had gone 34 years without finding out. Now she knew, and it was $600 worth of a brother's back going up her steps and a plate of turkey in the refrigerator with foil on it until Sunday. She would have told you she'd do it again. She would also have told you she cried about it on the Wednesday, in the bus, in the lot, before the afternoon run with the engine off. Both of those are true, and she doesn't work very hard to make them agree. There are women who have carried a whole household for 30 years and never once had a line on paper with their own name on it. Nobody notices, because nothing ever falls. That is exactly why nobody notices. That is what it cost. And she'd tell you the third jar got thin some weeks too, and that July was long, and that she was tired in a new way that year. So on a Tuesday morning in February, at 6:15, Della saw the whole thing from the other side of it. Shanice was at the stop at the bottom of Monroe, with her too on the bus already. 29 years old, works at the hospital, comes off a shift and puts children on a bus and goes back. She was standing under the light counting bills in her hand, and Della watched her count them and put them back, all of them, into the same pocket. One pocket. Every dollar she had in one pocket. Della knew that count. She had done it at a kitchen table for 34 years, with one pile and not one line in it. She pulled the brake and opened the door and asked the girl if she had 2 minutes, and the girl said she had about that. "You're not bad with money," Della told her. "There's just no line in it. It's all one thing, so it all goes at one time." She gave it to her plain, standing in a bus door in February. 3 jars. Anything you've got at the house, jelly jars, coffee cans, it does not matter. The first one is yours, and it gets filled first, before anything and anybody, and it does not get opened. The second one is your place, wherever you stay, because everything you own is standing under a roof. The third one is the month. And when the girl said what everybody says, that she couldn't take from the babies to put money in a jar, Della said the thing she'd been carrying since October. "You're not taking anything from anybody. You're just cutting it apart so you can see it. One piece of cloth don't make a cover, baby. You ain't cut it apart yet." Then she reached in her coat and got out the cigar box, because it rode with her now, and she opened it up in the doorway of a school bus in the dark and told the girl to pick one. Shanice held the box in both hands under the light for longer than picking a button takes. Then she picked a brown one with 4 holes in it. "Put that in the bottom of the first jar," Della said. "So the first thing your hand touches in there is not the money." The girl asked her how much a week. Everybody asked that, and Della has an answer for it now. "Whatever number doesn't scare you," she said. "Mine started at 40 and it was not enough, and it did not matter. It's not the number. Anybody can hold a number for 3 weeks. It's that it goes in first, and that you have to move something out of the way to get to it." And she shut the door and pulled off and took 22 children to school, and Shanice stood at the bottom of Monroe Street in the dark with a brown button in her fist. Miss Burt was at her corner 4 stops later with her great-grandson and no sack because it was February and the circle had finished the cover in January. Della opened the door and told her the whole thing had come out of a bag of scraps in October. Miss Burt said she didn't remember saying anything in October. And then she said, "Well, that's how it works, baby," and got the boy up the steps. Della still can't sew. That has not changed, and it is not going to. But she goes to the quilting circle on Wednesdays now, and Miss Burt does the stitching and Della does the cutting, which everybody agrees she has a real hand for. Straight lines, no hesitating. She cuts a whole bolt into squares and hands them over one at a time, and the women laugh at her about it, because who ever heard of a quilter who can't sew? Friday still comes. The check still comes. She still puts it on her mother's kitchen table, on the same table, under the same light. The difference takes about 40 seconds. $90 in the first jar, and the lid goes on. And then she deals with the rest of her life. The tax bill came in the fall, and she sat down to open it. That is the whole thing right there, if you want the smallest true version of it. She sat down. There are 3 jars on that table, and the blue button is still in the bottom of the first one, and it is never coming out of there. It's not for spending. It's for the 30 seconds where her hand goes in after something and touches a coat she bought herself when she was 20 and remembers whose money it is. If this story got hold of something in you, put it in the comments. Write it exactly like this: 3 jars. All capitals. I read every single one of them, and I want you to see how many women are down there with you. Then send this to somebody who has been carrying it all in one pocket for years and calling that being strong. And if you're still here at the end, come stay with us. Subscribe, tap the bell, and let the next one find you. There's a new woman every week, and not one of them got there fast. If you want to take the first step today, there's a free app that will help you bring order to all of this. It's free, and it does the cutting apart for you if you don't have 3 jars under the sink. The link is down in the comments. Take care of yourself and cut it apart. You cannot fix what you cannot see. And if you've got a little more time tonight, there's another one waiting for you right here. A woman in Kentucky who walked her paycheck straight past the grocery store one Friday and finally saved her first $1,000 at 56. Start it now.